7 human behaviors that quietly give away all your power and what the smartest people in the room never do. There is a version of you that people respect deeply, and then there is a version of you that people learn to walk over. The terrifying part is that most people never realize which version they have been showing the world. What separates someone who commands a room from someone who slowly becomes invisible in it has almost nothing to do with talent, education, or even hard work. It has everything to do with a set of quiet, almost invisible behaviors that either build your power or drain it completely. The people who rise to the top of any social structure, any boardroom, any relationship have known something for centuries that most people are never taught. And once you understand what these behaviors are, you will never look at yourself or the people around you the same way again. Stay with this till the end, because the last one might be the one that changes everything for you. Let us start with a behavior so common that almost everyone does it, and almost no one recognizes how much it costs them. It is the habit of over-explaining yourself. Think about the last time you were in a situation where you had to make a decision, whether at work, in a relationship, or simply in your daily life, and you found yourself offering a paragraph of reasons why you did what you did. You were late, so you explained the traffic, the meeting that ran long, the phone call you had to take. You said no to something, so you followed that no with 3 sentences justifying your position. On the surface, this feels like being polite or considerate, but what it actually communicates, on a deeply psychological level, is that you do not fully trust your own decisions. Psychologists who study social influence have found that people who habitually justify their choices to others signal, without meaning to, that they believe their choices require the approval of others to be valid. The moment you start treating your own judgment like it needs a defense attorney, you have handed the other person a kind of authority over you that they never asked for and may not even respect. The second behavior is one of the most widespread in the modern world, and it is destroying people's sense of self-worth one interaction at a time. It is the compulsive need to fill silence. Silence in human interaction is not neutral. It is a powerful social signal. When most people encounter silence in a conversation, they rush to break it. They laugh nervously, they introduce a new topic, they repeat what they just said in different words. But here is what that behavior actually tells the person across from you. It tells them that silence makes you uncomfortable, that uncertainty unsettles you, and that their approval matters so much to you that you cannot allow any moment of ambiguity to exist between you. Strategic thinkers, leaders, and highly self-possessed individuals have understood for a very long time that the person who can comfortably sit in silence during a tense exchange often holds more authority in that moment than the person speaking. Silence forces the other person to think. It creates a kind of psychological pressure that only those who are comfortable in their own presence can sustain without flinching. Now, here is where it starts to get genuinely uncomfortable, because the third behavior hits close to home for most people who consider themselves kind, generous, or loyal. It is the habit of making yourself permanently available. There is a cultural story that most people have been told since childhood, that being there for others, always answering, always responding, always showing up instantly, is a sign of love and reliability. And in some contexts, that is absolutely true. But in the broader social world, unlimited availability has a hidden cost. When you respond to every message within seconds, cancel your own plans to accommodate others at the last minute, and treat your own time as less valuable than other people's convenience, you are quietly teaching the people around you exactly how much your time and presence are worth. Researchers who study social exchange theory have found that scarcity increases perceived value, not just in markets, but in human relationships as well. This does not mean becoming cold or unreachable. It means understanding that your presence should feel like something worth having, not something that can be summoned at will. The fourth behavior is one that virtually nobody talks about because it is wrapped in the language of honesty and authenticity. It is the pattern of sharing too much, too soon, with too many people. In a world that constantly tells us to be vulnerable, to open up, to let our walls down, there is a deeply important distinction that rarely gets made. Vulnerability shared in the right relationship, at the right time, with the right person, can be one of the most powerful forms of connection available to human beings. But vulnerability shared indiscriminately, with people who have not yet demonstrated that they are worthy of it, is not bravery, it is exposure. There is a reason that throughout human history, the most powerful figures in any society guarded information about themselves very carefully, not because they were dishonest, but because they understood that information is one of the primary currencies of social power. When people know everything about you, including your fears, your insecurities, your past failures, and your current struggles, they hold pieces of you that can be used, consciously or not, to shape how they see you and how you see yourself in their presence. This brings us to the fifth behavior, and it is one that is deeply tied to the need for external validation. It is the habit of changing your position under social pressure, not because you were presented with new information or a genuinely better argument, but simply because someone pushed back hard enough or looked at you with enough disappointment. Most people, when faced with pushback, begin to soften their stance, not because they change their mind, but because disagreement feels socially dangerous. The psychological principle at work here is called conformity pressure, and it has been studied extensively since the landmark social experiments of Solomon Asch in the 1950s, which showed that a significant percentage of people would give a clearly wrong answer in a group setting simply because everyone else was giving that wrong answer. What those experiments revealed is that most human beings are wired to prioritize social harmony over individual truth. And while that instinct has its place, it becomes a serious liability when it causes you to abandon your own reasoned position simply because maintaining it requires tolerating someone else's discomfort. The sixth behavior is perhaps the subtlest of all, and yet it may be the most consequential. It is the habit of seeking permission before taking up space. This can look like asking whether it is okay to share your opinion before you share it, adding constant qualifiers to your statements like, "I might be wrong, but this is probably a bad idea," or "maybe this doesn't make sense." It can look like physically shrinking in a room, speaking at a volume that requires people to lean in, or consistently positioning yourself at the edge of conversations rather than at the center of them. On the surface, this seems modest and unassuming, but what it communicates to others, particularly to those who are paying attention, is a fundamental uncertainty about whether you belong. And here is a deeply important psychological truth. How much space you take up in any environment, literally and figuratively, plays a significant role in how seriously other people take you. This is not about arrogance or aggression. It is about embodying a quiet, grounded confidence that makes it clear that your presence in any room is a deliberate choice, not an accident. Now, let us pause and let this sit for a moment, because these 6 behaviors are not character flaws. They are learned patterns. They developed in most people as strategies for surviving social environments, many of which genuinely required them. The child who learned to over-explain was probably punished for acting without justification. The person who became permanently available may have grown up in an environment where their worth was tied to their usefulness. The one who fills every silence may have lived in a home where silence meant something was wrong. Understanding where these patterns come from does not excuse them, but it does make them easier to examine with honesty and compassion. The work of changing them is not about becoming a harder or colder person. It is about recognizing which of your behaviors are actually expressions of who you are, and which ones are old scripts running in the background that no longer serve you. The 7th behavior is the one that connects all the others, and it is the one that people spend their entire lives circling without ever quite naming it.
It is the chronic habit of making other people's emotional comfort more important than your own truth. This goes deeper than people-pleasing, which most people already know they do to some degree. This is something more fundamental. It is the operating assumption, usually unconscious, that your primary job in any interaction is to make sure the other person feels okay. So you agree when you do not agree. You laugh at things that are not funny to you. You downplay your achievements so others do not feel inadequate. You absorb people's frustration as though it belongs to you, even when it clearly does not. You apologize for things that are not your fault, simply to restore ease. And over time, this pattern does something quite specific to how others perceive you. It makes you someone they feel comfortable around, yes, but it also makes you someone they do not particularly respect. Because on some level, conscious or not, people tend to respect those who have a clear sense of where they begin and where others end. What is remarkable about all 7 of these behaviors is that each one, in isolation, looks like a virtue. Explaining yourself looks like accountability. Filling silence looks like warmth. Always being available looks like devotion. Sharing openly looks like honesty. Adjusting your position looks like flexibility. Shrinking looks like humility. Prioritizing others' comfort looks like generosity. The issue is never the surface appearance of the behavior. The issue is what is underneath it and what it costs you over time. The cumulative effect of all 7 operating together in the same person is an individual who has slowly and almost invisibly handed over the controls of their social and emotional life to the people around them. And the deeply disorienting part is that the people who have the most of them often believe they are doing everything right, because every single one of these behaviors gets praised and rewarded in the short term.
The people who tend to rise in any social environment, who keep their power over the long term, who age into a kind of gravity that others find almost magnetic, share a common thread. They are not more talented, better looking, or more fortunate in most cases. What they have is a stable and consistent relationship with their own interior life. They know what they think. They know what they value. They are genuinely at ease with the idea that some people will not like them, some decisions will not be understood, and some silences will go unfilled. They have made a quiet and private decision, often after years of doing the opposite, that their most important job in any room is not to manage how others feel about them, but to remain fully themselves. That distinction, as simple as it sounds, is one of the most difficult things a human being can actually do consistently, because every social environment applies pressure, subtle and constant, to conform, to smooth, to accommodate.
Now here is what makes this particular conversation important right now, in this moment in history. The social world has changed dramatically. Social media, the performance culture around it, the metrics of visibility and validation have supercharged all 7 of these behaviors in ways that previous generations never experienced. When your sense of worth is tied to external responses, when you carry a device in your pocket that can show you at any moment whether people approved of what you shared, the psychological patterns described in this video do not just persist. They get reinforced dozens of times per day in a feedback loop that is almost impossible to escape without conscious attention. The platforms that dominate daily life are built around exactly the kind of external validation seeking that makes all 7 of these behaviors worse. And the result is that millions of people are walking around with a sophisticated, practiced ability to perform confidence while experiencing, privately, a profound disconnection from their own sense of inner authority.
So what does the alternative actually look like in practice? Because identifying a pattern is one thing, and living differently is quite another. It starts, and almost every serious thinker on human behavior has arrived at this same point from different directions, with the practice of sitting with discomfort, instead of immediately moving to resolve it. When you feel the pull to explain yourself, see if you can notice that pull without acting on it. not to be rude or withhold information that is genuinely relevant, but simply to observe whether what you are about to say is actually necessary, or whether it is a response to the discomfort of not knowing what someone thinks of your decision. That pause, that space between the impulse and the action, is where genuine behavioral change lives. It is not traumatic, it does not feel like a breakthrough in the moment, but practiced repeatedly over time, it begins to alter the relationship you have with other people's opinions of you in ways that nothing else quite does.
When you stop needing people to understand every move you make, something genuinely strange happens. You begin to notice that the people in your life who matter most do not actually need those explanations. They trust you. The people who require constant justification before they extend you basic respect are often signaling something about the nature of the relationship that deserves honest examination. Similarly, when you begin to occupy your own silence without rushing to fill it, you discover that most of the things you say in a state of social anxiety add very little to the conversation and sometimes actively work against you. This is not about becoming cold or withholding. It is about learning to distinguish between things you genuinely want to say and things you say in order to manage the emotional temperature of a room that is not actually your responsibility to manage.
On the matter of availability, the shift is subtle, but its effects are enormous. It does not require becoming unavailable or creating artificial mystery. It simply requires treating your own time with the same basic respect you would extend to someone you genuinely admire. Ask yourself honestly whether you cancel your own plans, your own rest, your own focused work to accommodate requests that could have waited or that were not genuine emergencies at all. Most people, when they examine this honestly, discover a pattern of self-interruption that has been going on for years, not because others demanded it, but because the alternative, allowing someone to wait, allowing someone to be temporarily inconvenienced, produced an anxiety that felt more urgent than whatever they were doing before.
Regarding the seventh and deepest behavior, the one around emotional caretaking, the shift that matters most is not about becoming less caring. Caring about others is one of the most genuinely valuable things a person can be. The shift is about locating the source of that care. When care comes from a place of genuine love and chosen generosity, it has warmth in it. When it comes from anxiety about what will happen if you do not provide it, it has a different texture entirely. The people receiving it often sense the difference, even when they cannot name it. And there is an irony in this that is worth sitting with. When you stop managing people's emotional experience on their behalf, and instead bring your honest, grounded presence into the room, the relationships that remain tend to deepen in ways that the managed ones never could. Everything described across this entire conversation points toward the same underlying truth. Power, the genuine, durable, interior kind, is not something you take from others or project outward in the form of dominance or aggression. It is something that grows inside a person who has decided, clearly and repeatedly, to stop outsourcing their sense of self to the responses of others. That decision does not announce itself. It is not accompanied by a dramatic moment or a single revelation. It happens in small, unglamorous, often lonely choices. The choice to let a silence breathe. The choice to hold a position when it would be so much easier to yield. The choice to keep your most important truths inside the relationships that have actually earned them. The choice to take up the space you are genuinely entitled to, without apology, without caveat, and without waiting for someone else to give you permission to exist at full volume. The people who master these things do not always look powerful in the conventional sense. They are not always the loudest in the room or the most visibly confident, but there is something in the way they carry themselves that registers on a level beneath conscious thought, something that communicates quietly and without effort that they know something, that they have arrived at a relationship with themselves that does not require your validation to stay standing. And the fascinating thing is that this quality, this groundedness, this interior authority is not inherited or assigned. It is built, slowly,
through practice, through failure, through the patient and repetitive work of choosing differently when every instinct says to do what you have always done. The question worth asking yourself right now, before you move on to whatever comes next, is which of these 7 behaviors do you recognize most clearly in yourself? And more importantly, what would change if you stopped?